On a warm August day in 1912, the Dunbar family, Piercy, Leslie, and their 4-year-old son Bobby, set out for a peaceful vacation by Lake Swayze in Louisiana. The shimmering waters and the carefree laughter of children filled the air with a sense of simple joy, but in a fleeting moment, that serenity turned to terror. Bobby wandered away from his parents, vanishing without a trace. What began as a desperate search for a lost child would unravel into a mystery, spanning nearly a century. One woven with heartbreak, mistaken identities, and a truth so elusive it would take modern science to uncover. The disappearance shattered the Dunbars for days. They scoured the lake, edged alongside local authorities and neighbors, calling Bobby's name into the wind. Weeks stretched into months, each passing day dimming their hope. The community rallied, but the boy remained lost, leaving behind a family clinging to fading memories and a case that grew cold in the files of a small Louisiana town. Then, 8 months later, in April 1913, a faint glimmer pierced the darkness. Police stopped William Walter, a wandering craftsman traveling with a young boy who bore an uncanny resemblance to Bobby Dunbar. Walter insisted the child was Bruce Anderson, the son of a friend placed in his care. But to the Dunbars, this was no coincidence. It was a miracle. When Leslie Dunbar first laid eyes on the boy, uncertainty gripped her. Nearly a year had altered the child's features, and doubt clouded her mind. Yet something stirred when he reportedly called her mother, and others swore he recognized her younger brother. The next day, as she bathed him and traced familiar scars across his small frame, her hesitation melted into conviction. This was her Bobby, returned to her at last. The reunion brought tears of relief, but the story was far from over. Just as the Dunbars began to mend their broken lives, a woman named Julia Anderson stepped forward, her voice trembling with a mother's desperate claim. She insisted the boy was her son Bruce, taken by Walter against her will. The case erupted into a public spectacle, pitting two grieving families against each other. Authorities devised a test. Julia faced a lineup of children, tasked with picking out her own. At first, she faltered, her hesitation seized upon by skeptics. But when she saw the boy unclothed, she pointed with certainty. It was Bruce. Still, the tide of opinion had turned. A single mother from North Carolina, Julia faced a barrage of doubt, her humble circumstances casting her as an unreliable figure in a drama hungry for resolution. The matter landed in a courtroom with William Walter, accused of kidnapping. Julia stood by him, testifying to his innocence and pleading for her son. The evidence, however, favored the Dunbars. Walter was convicted, sentenced to prison, and branded a villain in the public eye. Yet after 2 years, a lawyer secured his release, and until his dying day, he maintained he had never stolen a child, only cared for one entrusted to him. Julia returned to North Carolina, her fight lost, but her spirit unbroken. She married, bore 7 more children, and carried on, though the shadow of Bruce never left her. Her descendants would later recall her quiet resolve, her whispered vows that the truth would one day surface. Across the years, the Dunbar family raised the boy as Bobby, building a life atop the fragile foundation of that long-ago reunion. But as he grew into manhood, an unease lingered. He spoke of his childhood with a strange detachment, as if the pieces of his past didn't quite fit. His own children, and later his grandchildren, sensed the cracks in the family tale, a quiet suspicion that something remained untold. Decades rolled by, and in the 1970s, Margaret Dunbar, one of Bobby's grandchildren, took up the thread. Driven by curiosity and a need to know, she pored over yellowed newspapers, sifted through family lore, and tracked down fading voices from the past. Her quest breathed new life into the mystery, setting the stage for a revelation no one could have foreseen in 1912. In 2004, nearly 90 years after Bobby vanished, science stepped in where memory and testimony had failed. Bob Dunbar Jr., the son of the man raised as Bobby, offered his DNA for testing, compared to a sample from a direct Dunbar cousin. The results struck like a thunderbolt. No genetic link existed. No genetic link existed. The boy who had lived as Bobby Dunbar was not a Dunbar at all. He was Bruce Anderson, Julia's son, stolen from one family and grafted onto another. The real Bobby, it seemed, had met a grim fate that day by the lake, likely claimed by an alligator. His small body lost to the waters that once echoed with his laughter. The truth unveiled by a simple strand of DNA rewrote a century of history. For Julia Anderson, it was a vindication that came too late, a bittersweet echo of her unwavering love. For the Dunbars, it was a wrenching loss rediscovered. The son they mourned had never returned, replaced by a child they loved as their own. The mystery of Bobby Dunbar stands as more than a historical footnote. It is a haunting tapestry of human frailty and resilience. It lays bare the limits of early 20th century justice, where assumptions and emotion often trumped evidence, and it celebrates the quiet power of science to right old wrong. The man who lived as Bobby Dunbar carried an identity not his own, a life shaped by a mistake he could never have understood. His descendants' courage in chasing the truth reflects a universal longing to know who we are and where we belong. Julia's story, too, endures as a testament to a mother's heart beating against the odds long after hope seemed lost. In the end, the tale of Bobby Dunbar is a mirror held up to the complexities of family, the fragility of truth, and the enduring quest for justice. The scars it left on two families linger as a somber reminder of a past unresolved until a drop of blood and a twist of fate brought clarity to a mystery that had whispered through generations.